guys, Jamie Lindsay with Joplin for Justice. Thank you again for joining us this weekend for our last event in June. We're going to do a Rose and a Thorn kind of storytelling event where we can have community members in the Joplin area share some stories about their experiences living in this area.
Hi, and I'm Dola Flake. Thanks again for joining us on this online event. We know that stories is one of the oldest ways to communicate information. So we hope that you will connect with our storytellers today, hear a little bit of their experiences, a rose and a thorn right here in Joplin.
Hi, I'm Jessica Torres, and I'm 38 years old. My family immigrated from Spain to Mexico and then to the USA many years ago, but I had decided to stay in Mexico. Now I am an immigrant here. I have lived in the USA for a couple of years now. I had come to the USA many times for the last 20 years, but only on vacation. I had a very privileged and comfortable life in Mexico, but the increasing violence, the femicides, and also an experience of police harassment forced me to find a better place to live and thrive. So with great sadness in my heart, I had to leave the country that saw me grow. I had to leave my house and my friends to come here and start building a new life in Joplin. Now let's talk about the rose, the good things of living in Joplin, being Hispanic or Latino. Most of us Hispanics are very family-oriented, and something good of being Hispanic in Joplin is that this community, different from other towns or cities that I've been to in the USA, this community is very united, altruistic, and also family-oriented, which makes it easier for me or people like me to adapt to. Also, living in a town where more than 80% of its population is white draws some kind of special attention to me. Some people are curious about my accent, so they approach asking me, "Where are you from?" And that simple question then starts a conversation, and many times it develops in a friendship, which I am very grateful for. Now, let's talk about the thorn, or the not so good things about being a Hispanic or Latino in Joplin. Even when their intention may be good or just mere curiosity, some other people start asking me questions, trying to find out if I came here legally. That makes me a little uncomfortable, and also sometimes it's kind of scary. They make me feel like if I had to pull out my documents, even in the middle of a date or a social gathering. Another bad thing I have experienced is that being so few Hispanic or bilingual people in this area, some people are not used to listening to a different language in public. My parents and I have been yelled at for speaking our language in places like the Walmart parking lot or a restaurant. That is painful. That is also scary because those people were acting very aggressively and they were being really loud. But it also made us really sad. I had seen many of those situations on the internet before, but I never thought that something like that could happen to me or my family. And I never thought that something like that could happen in Joplin. To finalize, I must say that I am very grateful for the people that I have met here, both the good and the bad. And I am also very happy of being part of a community that is growing not only in numbers, but also in humanity, in diversity and inclusion. Now I invite everyone to keep on learning from each other and to keep on fighting to make this community even stronger and better than it already is. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Stephanie, and I was born in Washington State. I moved to England when I was just 4 years old, and we lived there in a very small town. in England. My adoptive father decided we needed to come back to the US, and lo and behold, we were plopped down into the San Fernando Valley, which has 1 million people. So from growing up on an island with 7,000 people on our little island off the coast of England, I ended up being surrounded by 1 million people. So that was quite a culture shock. I went to high school, was always not real happy with being in a big city, and luckily as an adult we ran into a friend that said, "Oh, I know a great place to raise your kids, and why not come out and visit us in Joplin, Missouri?" So my husband and I got in the car once we had our holiday vacation time, and we took off, spent 2 weeks here in Joplin, Missouri in May 1981, and I just fell in love with the place. My whole body chemistry changed, and it was like I was home in England. And then when we got out and about in the community, the people were really, really nice. They welcomed us, and they just couldn't do enough for us. And it was just really nice and slow paced. So of course, the next year we decided that's where we're going to raise our kids. So 1982, we move out here and decide to go look house hunting, and end up at a real estate agent. And this is when I was quite surprised, because the real estate agent looked at us and said, "I can tell you where to buy a house where no Black people are living." And we were just absolutely in shock, because this was 1982 and we were not expecting something like that. So of course we found another real estate agent. And then the other thing we used to do is we had a 2-3-year-old son, and we'd go out to York Park and hang out there and enjoy ourselves there, and then kind of shared it with some friends of ours. And they said, "What are you doing at York Park? That's the Black people's park." And yet again, here we are in shock. So of course we continued going back to York Park. And then when I enrolled my son in school, yet again we faced some racism, and of course much more personal, because this was my son after all. And he gets a wonderful dark tan in summer. My father's Colombian. So he ended up being nicknamed Paco, of all things. And it's so, yet again, I kept my mouth shut. Didn't like it. I did pull him out of that school, but I was just, again, in shock. But kept my mouth shut because I was white enough, so therefore didn't really notice what was going on, or I noticed, but I kept my mouth shut, because that's the easy way out, isn't it? So I look back on it and I'm really frustrated. I didn't speak up and say that's not appropriate and do all the right things that I should have done, and realize that I'm part of the problem by not having spoken up, because that's why we're still where we are today. When you don't speak up, nothing changes. So, and I'm going to look at my notes here. I know better now, so therefore I have decided to take the position that I'm going to stand out, be heard, be out publicly. I'm done with keeping quiet, because we have got to help the people of color in our community, and I'm especially the Black people. After I found out about their history, because of course we weren't taught all the history of the Black people and their suffering and everything. So now that I'm learning and teaching myself more about white fragility and to support Black people, I'm out there, and this is why I've been asked to come on here, and I've been very humbled to be asked to do this, and also to be accepted as an ally for Black people, because I certainly feel very strongly that we need to speak up and do more. And our community has come a long way, but racism still exists, and we need to be out there supporting. So I hope that you can maybe take a little bit of my story and find your voice, and let's speak up and be allies for Joplin for Justice.
When the night is gone and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Whoa, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. In the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, for the mountains should crumble to the sea. I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear. Just as long as you stand by me. Darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Won't you stand now? Stand by me, stand by me.
Hey guys, my name is Jordan Burton. Been blessed to be raised here in Joplin. Lived here in the area professionally for most of my life and had some really great experiences. Being black in Joplin means a few things. First, it means really good schools, right? So like well funded, great resources, great teachers. Throughout my life, I've been blessed with excellent educators who've really kind of helped me with developing a love of education that continues to this day. And part of that, I learned some really good things. But some things I didn't learn. One, I did not learn that the 13th Amendment didn't actually end slavery. It just made it illegal to enslave people who weren't criminals. Two, I never understood that private prisons existed, and nor did I understand how much they've exploded here over the last 2 or 3 decades to a multi-billion-dollar business. And lastly, a little less heavy, I never knew that interracial marriage was illegal until 1967, which for me is interesting because it seems like it's something that happened a long time ago, but my mom was actually born in 1964, so decently recent. Part of that is just kind of the education system we live in. I feel like we've kind of denied black history as part of American history. You know, we look at them as two separate things instead of understanding that part of American history is the plight of all races, all minorities, all majorities. Everyone involved in America contributes to American history, and I think that's kind of something we struggle with as a whole, as a society. One thing I did learn though is I learned that I was black, and I was made aware of that at a pretty young age. Actually, in 4th grade, I went to school in Carl Junction, and I was a knucklehead, and I got in trouble a lot, and I just thought I was a bad kid. And I actually took home a letter one day from my teacher's aide to give to my parents. And in that letter, she kind of outlined some issues that she felt like were happening in the classroom, and she wanted to talk to my mom. And long story short, my mom, my dad, the teacher who I had at the time, and the principal, Connie Godwin, had a meeting and decided that I should move to another classroom. I was actually moved to Stephanie Shrum's room, who was still an educator. Ms. Shrum was fantastic, very loving. She's everything that you could ever want in a teacher, especially with fourth grade kids. And it's an experience that I still think about to this day. I think there are a lot of good people. I think that in that, people are just kind of misinformed or uneducated on black issues and kind of what happens either systemically or systematically that has helped oppress black people, and that's something that can really change things is the awareness and the education. And again, I've been blessed in this area to have great education. I just really hope that we're really intentional about trying to educate ourselves and each other about issues that happen in communities that maybe we don't know enough about. So whether that's black issues or female issues or homosexual issues or whatever the minority group is, that history is American history, and their fight is an American fight. And I think we all have to be very cognizant of that and trying to create change. And, something we like to say in our house a lot is be the change. And in this ever-changing climate, I think we all have to do our part.
Hello, my name is Toby Yarokun. I am a physician at Mercy Hospital, and I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I moved to DC for my professional schooling and recently moved to the Joplin area about 2 years ago after accepting a position at Mercy Hospital. My transition to the Joplin community was an interesting one. It looked very different than what I was used to coming from major cities in DC and Atlanta. And one thing that I probably didn't appreciate about coming from those cities was that there was a wealth of diversity, and especially a wealth of people who looked just like me. So although I took pride in it, I probably didn't value it as much as I did coming out here. So when I came here, I was able to meet quite a few people from different backgrounds, and I felt like I was pretty welcome. Everyone was very, very nice, very, very welcoming. So I definitely had some roses in joining this community, but definitely had some thorns as well. I'll start with one of the more memorable roses. I was seeing a patient, and it happened to be a man of color. And when I first walked into the room and I introduced myself, he kind of looked at me with surprise and said, "You're the doctor?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Wow, I'm really proud. I'm really proud to see you in the position that you are." And he was excited to receive care from me. And each time I had an encounter with him, it was a very pleasurable one where we were able to talk about more than just his acute issue, but we were able to talk about his overall health and well-being. And that was one thing that I definitely took away as a positive about this community, is that people were very, very welcoming and willing to talk about things that you might not appreciate as much in other areas. But I also had a thorn that was pretty memorable, where in the same work setting, I had an individual say, without knowing, try to give me a compliment. And he said that most people of your ethnicity don't make it this far. They typically end up in jail. They have come from single parent households. They're usually poor, on the street, usually end up in violent situations. But it seems like you were able to overcome all of that and make it to where you're at now. When in fact, I didn't have to overcome much of that. I told him that there are plenty of people that look just like me where this is the norm. And I never wanted to think that, I never wanted him to feel like me being in the position that I am was me being special. So, this community has provided a wealth of different experiences, but, being a person of color gives you both rose experiences and thorny experiences that make you pretty introspective.
Hello, my name is Sheena Lal, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I came to Joplin 2 years ago from New York City. I am from Queens, New York, and in fact, Queens is one of the country's most diverse counties. So I would say one of the largest shocks to me coming to Joplin was experiencing such a monolithic demographic. It was the first time in my life that I really didn't see very much diversity. So I had come from a place where I was really used to seeing people that were very different and very different in their views. And so coming to Joplin was the first time that I experienced something that was the opposite to that. So I actually was a teacher for 10 years. I worked in challenging school districts throughout the Northeast, and after teaching English for about 5 years, I recognized that my students had so much trauma and had been through so much that forcing them to read the books they didn't want to read in English class was not making an impact. And that because of systemic racism, I really needed to figure out a way to help on a larger level. And so I went back to school and I got a dual master's degree from Columbia University's Teachers College in psychology. And my program specifically focused on race and racism in America. Upon completion of my degree, I started to work for Johns Hopkins University as an educational consultant. And I went into some of the country's lowest performing schools and just did a lot of analysis of data to figure out what their attendance, behavior, and coursework numbers looked like. And from there, we created plans to help do things like reduce the number of suspensions of African American males, to help bring resources in from the community to address mental health needs, and overall kind of worked with partners from around New York City to improve schools. So I came to Joplin because my husband had a job opportunity, and I figured that my resume would stand on its own and that I would easily be able to get a job here. And so I was very surprised to find it quite difficult to find an opportunity to get into public schools, private schools throughout the area. I presented what I do and was very often told, like, we're not there, we're not doing that, or we're not ready for someone to do things like that. And that was very unfortunate because my passion was in helping children who were underserved. So eventually, I used my counseling degree and became a counselor for Renewed Mental Health, which is one of Joplin's only counseling centers that really publicly displays their acceptance of the LGBTQIA community. So, a rose for being in Joplin is that I was able to connect with people who really felt like I felt and wanted to voice the things that I was trying to say, and allowing them to have a voice of their own. So working with my clients was wonderful because they had never been exposed to someone who was accepting or someone who was not trying to make them do something they didn't want to do. And that was a very pleasant experience to be able to really help youth that were struggling with their identity to be proud of themselves. And so I'm really grateful for that opportunity. A thorn about being an ethnicity in Joplin was that I really was searching for diversity. And I took a drive through McDonald County with an organization to learn more about the area. And I was really surprised to see that there were people that looked different throughout that community. And then I was invited to the mosque here in Joplin for an Eid event, and it was wonderful to walk in a building and see so many people of varying ethnicities together. And I remember being shocked, like mouth fallen open. Where are all these people? And I think that the point of my thorn is that while it does not speak to direct racism, like someone individually saying something to your face, my experience of being able to walk into that mosque and feel like surrounded by difference and diversity made such an impact on me, because there was a silent culture in Joplin that I felt, and it really hid diversity. It did not celebrate people that were different. Memorable experiences I had was going to the Pride picnic and encountering a teenager who let me know that he was half Mexican, and he said that it was something that he could not openly tell people because he was fearful that they would call him un-American or tell him to go back to his own country. And whereas that may not have happened with everyone he told, the fact that even our children are afraid to be who they are in our community really speaks to the culture that is systemically embedded, if not individually and straightforwardly. It's a great example of how people really feel shushed. And I thought to myself, where are all these people? You know, like I don't see them every day when I walk around, when I go to stores. And that has been one of my ongoing questions. Where are all of the people of color in Joplin? I used to call my mom and explain to her that it felt like there was a blanket over me here, and that although I was trained as a social justice fighter, that even I felt at times that it was like weird for me to express my opinions or to express my thoughts that maybe did not agree with everyone else's. And so just feeling that as an adult, as a trained clinician, as someone who was taught to stand up for others, I couldn't imagine what it would feel like to be in a community without all of that background if I still felt the pressure myself to be hushed. And I think if I could have a wild dream for Joplin, it would be for people to be accepting of other ideas, of other cultures, of other foods, and really just embracing that, having multicultural events, inviting people to, bring their music and their dance and share it with others, because that is part of what makes us beautiful, that we are different. And so embracing difference would be my dream for Joplin.
Hi, my name is Stola, and thanks for being here to listen to my story. So a little bit about me. I went to Crowder College and then off to Missouri Southern before heading to Missouri State, where I got my master's in social work. While in graduate school, I was doing some research, looking across different identities like race, income level, gender, looking at data. And what I realized is that the disparities of outcomes or the progress between people, different groups, was significant. I was really distraught by this, one, because I was many of those identities, but also because I had been living in the environment that it was happening in and just simply not aware of it, and especially not aware of the impact that treatment of different people can have on the long-term progress of a group as a whole. So with that information, I went to one of my professors who asked me the $1 million question. Gave her the information, and calmly she asked me, well, what are you gonna do about it? So I went back, thought about it, and decided that the way I would make change was to do diversity and inclusion work. It could impact a lot of different social issues across a lot of different identities. And so I am now the Missouri State Diversity and Transition Coordinator, and I also do training and consulting around diversity and inclusion. So I started knocking on doors in 2015, asking to do trainings. Lots of people welcomed me in. usually was doing them for free, but sometimes getting a little compensation. One Joplin recognized the work that I was doing, and my community generously gifted me an opportunity to gain a certification and some really extensive training. So over the last couple years since receiving that training, I've been able to reach over 1,500 people in for-profit and nonprofit organizations, really just talking about issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social issues. So a little bit more about me. I am born and raised in Joplin, Missouri. I am biracial. So my mother is white and my father is Black. My stepfather is also white, which meant that I was raised in a white family. That came with its own set of challenges, just learning how I was different, but also fit in, and kind of finding my own identity and embracing both cultures. So the experience being in Joplin as a mixed person came with some positives, but also some really difficult things. So sometimes our rose and our thorn happen to be the same thing, and for me, that's the case today. So I'll start with my thorn. I like to end with the positive. So my thorn was the community. Growing up in Joplin, I had a consistent and continuous experiences related to racism. The first one that I remember, I was about 5 years old, and I was with a person in my family who I love dearly and was a wonderful person. We were going to an event with many people, and I wanted someone to come with me who was also African American. This family member told me that they wouldn't be able to come with us because their skin was darker than mine. And I can still remember exactly what it felt like to be confused and trying to process that information. And as I sat in the event and realized that what it meant is that my skin color wasn't as accepted as the white skin color, I remember starting to feel self-hate, really having a hard time embracing who I was and what I looked like. That burden stayed with me for a really long time before I began to love myself. Those experiences continued. In elementary, I loved being a brownie, but I dreaded wearing my brownie uniform each week because I knew that a group of students were going to follow behind me and point at me and call me the brownie in the brownie uniform. It happened every week. Other experiences, just people screaming out the car window as I walk down the street, derogatory statements, seeing symbols that I consider hate, like the Confederate flag, regularly flying in my community. I even remember dismissing racism for a long time. I often found myself in groups of people where being racist or making derogatory statements to people because of their race was a common thing. I wanted to make friends, so I just acted like it was okay when they told me things like I was different than the other Black people or that I was pretty for a Black girl. Each time it hurt me, but again, wanting to make friends, I began to minimize the effects of racism on myself and on our community. So those experiences continued throughout my life, but though they were difficult, were also very important and helpful lessons for me to really understand the dynamics between different cultures, white and Black culture, in my area. So I now get to talk about how my community was also a rose for me. My community in so many ways, so many different people have really embraced me, and doors have been opened for me, opportunities given, education provided, just on so many levels. I've had positive experiences that really grew me into the person that I am, and also gave me the opportunity and the platform to speak the message of equity, diversity, and inclusion as a valuable resource for our community, something that we have to move towards to continue to thrive as a community. So today I'm just really happy to be able to be working with the Joplin community and also Joplin for Justice. I'm very grateful for the support each and every person that posted a comment or shared a message or educated or collaborated, who engaged in community action. My gratitude for you all is just so great. And so on behalf of myself and my organizing team, Jamie Lindsay, Jamie Hammond, Kelsey and Geraldine, we just thank you so much for the support. Truly, this is a community effort that we cannot do on our own. We have a lot of work to do in Joplin, but we also have a very strong platform to move that work forward. So continue to stay engaged, continue to be a voice with us. But before I go, I do have to give a special shout out to Josh Shackles. Not only our event, but many important events in the community. He documents them through video, through photography, through making videos like this one. The value of that is just so great, and we truly appreciate him in so many different ways. So thank you, Josh Shackles, for providing this opportunity for us to hear the stories of so many, for us to connect and understand a little better, and for us to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity in the Joplin area so that we can become that more welcoming and inclusive community. Thank you.
Joplin for Justice had started together as a group of individuals. Me, Geraldine, and Jamie had wanted to do the first protest for George Floyd. After that, we connected with DOLA and DOLA's ties in the community, and we've really created a really strong platform that we have encouraged people to use throughout this process and throughout this movement that we're having in our world right now. So we're very thankful that everybody has joined in. We're really thankful that you're continuing to share and spread the message that we are promoting.
We have some goals for the future. We're still working a lot of that out, but what we do know for sure is we want Joplin for Justice to remain to be a platform to educate ourselves, to bring awareness, to hold people accountable, and to do some community action. So don't forget to sign our petition to keep Joplin PD just a little more transparent and accountable. We know that this builds trust and also is good for the community.